The rain slammed violently against the tall windows of the old house. Lightning flashed across the sky, turning the night bright for a moment before darkness swallowed everything again. The electricity had gone out earlier that evening. Only a few candles burned quietly on the wooden floor, their soft flames dancing each time the wind pushed against the walls. The entire house felt cold and silent. In the center of the living room sat Emily. Her wheelchair faced the large window, but she wasn't watching the storm. Her eyes were fixed on a letter shaking in her hands. Tears rolled slowly down her cheeks. Standing beside her was Marcus. Tall, strong, calm. But tonight, even Marcus looked worried. He gently placed his hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'm here for you." Emily closed her eyes and shook her head slowly. "You shouldn't be," she whispered. Marcus frowned. "Why not?" Emily let out a quiet, painful laugh. "Because my life is a mess." Lightning flashed again, lighting the room for a brief second. For a moment Marcus could clearly see the deep sadness in her eyes. 3 years ago, Emily Parker had lived a completely different life. She was full of energy and dreams. And most importantly, she was a dancer. From the time she was a little girl, Emily loved dancing more than anything else in the world. Music made her feel alive. Movement made her feel free. She spent years practicing every day, pushing her body to become stronger and better. Her dream was simple. She wanted to perform on the biggest stages in America. And finally, that dream was almost within reach. A famous dance company in New York had invited her to audition. It was the opportunity she had waited her entire life for. But the night before the audition changed everything. Emily had been driving home late from rehearsal. The streets were quiet and the winter air was cold. Soft snow had started falling. Her mind was filled with excitement about the next day. She kept imagining herself on stage, hearing the applause, feeling proud. But suddenly headlights appeared behind her. A car was speeding down the road far too fast. The driver had been drinking. Within seconds, the car lost control and slammed into Emily's vehicle. The crash was violent. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. Everything went dark. When Emily woke up in the hospital days later, she immediately knew something was wrong. Her body felt strange, heavy. She tried to move her legs. But nothing happened. At first she thought it was the medication. But the doctor's face told the truth before his words did. The accident had damaged her spine. She would never walk again. Emily's entire world collapsed in that moment. Dance was her life. And now it was gone forever. For a while people tried to support her. Friends visited. Flowers filled her hospital room. Everyone told her she was strong. Everyone promised they would always be there. But time slowly revealed the truth. As weeks turned into months, the visits stopped. Friends became busy. Messages stopped coming. Even the man she once believed she would marry eventually left. Emily learned something painful about life. When everything is easy, people stay. But when life becomes difficult, many disappear. Hope slowly faded from her world. Until she met Marcus. Marcus worked as a physical therapist at the rehabilitation center where Emily began her recovery. The first time they met, Emily barely spoke. She simply stared at the floor while Marcus tried to encourage her. But Marcus quickly realized something. Emily didn't need someone to push her. She needed someone who wouldn't give up on her. Day after day Marcus showed up with patience and kindness. Sometimes he told funny stories. Sometimes he simply sat beside her quietly. Slowly Emily began to open up again. For the first time since the accident, she started smiling. Then laughing. Marcus reminded her that life still had meaning. But tonight something had shaken her hope again. The letter in her hands came from a hospital. A spinal specialist had reviewed her medical records. There was a new surgery. Experimental, risky, but possible. There was a chance the procedure could restore some movement in her legs. A small chance she could walk again. But that chance came with a terrible price. $200,000. Emily stared at the number again. It felt impossible. Even hope is expensive, she whispered. Marcus slowly knelt in front of her. You're scared, he said gently. Emily nodded. What if I try and it fails? Marcus looked directly into her eyes. What if it works? Emily shook her head. I could never afford this surgery. Marcus took a deep breath. There was something he had been waiting to say. Something he had kept secret for months. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Emily looked confused. What is that? Marcus handed it to her. Open it. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the page. Then suddenly she froze. This says the surgery is already paid for. Marcus nodded quietly. Emily looked up at him in shock. That's impossible. Marcus smiled softly. I've been planning this for a long time. Emily's voice shook. But Marcus, the surgery costs $200,000. I know. How could you possibly afford that? Marcus hesitated for a moment. Then he spoke the truth. I sold my house. The room became completely silent. Even the storm outside seemed to fade. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You sold your house, for me. Marcus shrugged gently. It was just a building. Emily shook her head in disbelief. That was your future. Marcus smiled warmly. My future is seeing you happy again. Tears streamed down Emily's face. No one has ever done something like this for me. Marcus gently wiped her tears away. You once told me something, he said. Emily sniffed. What? Marcus smiled. You said dancing isn't about legs. It's about heart. He placed his hand gently over her chest. And Emily, your heart never stopped dancing. Emily began crying harder. But these were different tears. They were tears of hope. Marcus slowly stood and pushed her wheelchair toward the large window. Outside, the storm clouds were beginning to break apart. The moon slowly appeared through the darkness. Listen, Marcus said softly. Emily listened carefully. The thunder was fading. The rain had softened. It's quiet, she whispered. Marcus smiled. That's what a storm sounds like when it's ending. Emily looked up at him. Why would you do all this for me? Marcus paused for a moment. Then he finally spoke the words he had hidden for so long. Because I love you. Emily stared at him in surprise. You love me? Marcus nodded. I did from the first day you threw that water bottle at me during therapy. Emily laughed through her tears. I was angry. Marcus smiled. You still are. For the first time that night, Emily smiled. And for the first time in years, she believed her life wasn't over. Ending. 6 months later. Inside a small theater in New York City, the audience sat quietly as the lights dimmed. Soft music began playing. A spotlight appeared on stage. Then slowly, a woman walked into the light. Step by step, the audience gasped, because they knew her story. Emily Parker stood proudly under the spotlight. And in the front row sat Marcus, watching with tears in his eyes. As Emily took her first dance step in 4 years, the electricity had gone out earlier that evening. Only a few candles burned quietly on the wooden floor, their flames dancing with every gust of wind that slipped through the cracks of the windows. In the middle of the room sat Emily. Her wheelchair faced the window, but she wasn't looking at the storm. She was staring at a letter trembling in her hands. Her eyes were red from crying. Beside her stood Marcus, tall, broad-shouldered, strong, but the look on his face wasn't strength, it was worry. Marcus gently placed his hand on Emily's shoulder. Don't worry, he whispered softly. I'm here for you. Emily closed her eyes and shook her head slowly. You shouldn't be, she said quietly. Marcus frowned. Why would you say that? Emily took a deep breath, trying to stop her tears. Because my life is a disaster, Marcus. Lightning flashed again, lighting the room like a photograph. For a moment, Marcus could see the deep pain hiding behind her eyes. 3 years earlier, Emily Parker had lived a completely different life. She was known across her city as one of the most talented young dancers anyone had ever seen. From childhood, dance had been everything to her. Her mornings began with stretching and music. Her nights ended with practice. She lived inside rhythm and movement. Her dream was simple. One day, she wanted to perform on the biggest stages in America. And she was close, very close. A prestigious dance company in New York had invited her to audition. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Emily had practiced for months. Every step, every movement, every spin, her entire future rested on that audition. But the night before the big day, everything changed. Emily had stayed late at the studio practicing. The city streets were almost empty when she finally started driving home. Soft snow had begun falling. The roads were quiet. Her mind was full of dreams about tomorrow. But fate had other plans. As Emily approached an intersection, a loud engine roared somewhere behind her. A sports car came speeding around the corner. The driver had been drinking. He lost control. The car slammed into Emily's vehicle with terrifying force. Metal twisted. Glass shattered everywhere. The world spun into chaos. Then everything